This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me. Donald Trump defended his use of a mail-in ballot in Tuesday's Palm Beach, Florida special election to fill a state house seat for District 87. He voted in it, did it by mail-in ballot, and then he was asked about it Thursday he was asked about it, and he told reporters, it's okay if I use a mail-in ballot because I'm the president. Well, apparently Melania and Barron are also president because they too reportedly voted in that election using a mail-in ballot. That election didn't turn out the way Trump hoped. As I reported on yesterday's show, Emily Gregory is now the first Democrat in decades to represent Palm Springs in the Florida State House. This is a district Trump won in 2024 by 11 points. The Republican who ran for that seat in 2024 won it by 19 points. Emily Gregory, the Democrat, won it on Tuesday by nearly 3 points. That means in 16 months, we've seen a nearly 22% swing away from Donald Trump. This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for joining me. Here are the latest casualties as Trump's Iran war staggers into its 28th day. Iranian health officials say more than 1,937 Iranians have been killed since Trump ordered his airstrikes on February 28th. 24,800 reportedly injured, 212 are children, 240 are women. 13 U.S. military service members have been killed. In Israel's second front, that doesn't involve the United States, more than 1,100 Lebanese civilians have been killed. 1 million Lebanese civilians have been forced to flee their home since February 28th. This as Israel launches its ground invasion into southern Lebanon, taking control of all the land south of the Litani River. In Israel, 20 civilians have been killed by Iranian drone and missile attacks. It's becoming increasingly apparent that Trump unleashed a series of cataclysmic events in a part of the world he doesn't understand nor care to. And while casualties mount, while the world turns on the United States for sparking this conflagration, it's dawning on Trump that this has spiraled way beyond his control. Everybody told him not to do this, and he realizes he has nobody to blame for this other than everybody but himself. Don't think for 1 second he's ever going to have a come to Jesus moment and say, oh my God, what did I do? It's everybody's fault, not Trump's. Trump, I think, has met his match with Iran. Iran is like Trump, indefatigable. Iran, like Trump, will stop at nothing to win. Iran, like Trump, doesn't care how many people it destroys in order to stay in power. Like Trump, these attacks from Iran won't stop. Tel Aviv, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. Iran, like Trump, is even attacking its friends. Scorched earth. Donald Trump and Iran both have a scorched earth policy. He may have met his match here. The Financial Times reporting that for the first time since Trump's war started, there have been 0 tankers crossing through the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil flows. During the past week, a barrel of oil is now averaging roughly $107 for a barrel of oil. That's the average now. That is why the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, is now predicting inflation here in the United States will spike to 4.2% this year. Why did Trump get elected? Inflation. It's getting worse. The OECD also estimates that the world's 20 richest nations will average 4% inflation as well. Meanwhile, 2,000 fully loaded tankers are sitting in the Persian Gulf and they can't go anywhere. They're trapped because Iran won't let them pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And there's nothing Donald Trump can do to get them through the strait. When the week began on Monday, Trump insisted America won. Iran surrendered, and it was just a matter of days before we wrap things up. Iran responded by saying, "What the hell are you talking about?" Iran accused Trump of panicking over the closing of the Strait of Hormuz because oil prices are skyrocketing. Iran said the president is lying, hoping to trick the markets into lowering the price of oil by convincing the markets that there's a peace deal coming. Well, Trump can move markets, that he can, by lying. On Monday, when Trump just lied and said an Iran deal is imminent, the stock market jumped about 1,000 points. Trump said there would be no need to continue the war. Iran buckled. I gave them an ultimatum on Saturday, and now Iran has agreed to open Hormuz. There was exhilaration on Wall Street. Since the war began, we've grown accustomed to a barrel of oil selling in the triple digits. But Trump's announcement on Monday sent prices of Brent crude oil plummeting, selling for as low as $96 a barrel. Well, we know it's back up after everybody realized, oh yeah, Trump's a pathological liar. The war is reminiscent of last year's tariff announcements. Trump would move markets, controlling the tides with just a word. And just like last year's tariffs announcements, someone in the White House perhaps, was making well-timed bets before Trump's big announcements. It will take a congressional investigation after the midterms, assuming Democrats pick up one chamber of Congress. It will take congressional investigations to look into who the oil traders were this week, the ones making millions by placing bets just minutes before Donald Trump made his big announcements that turned out to be lies. His lie that Iran wanted to sit at the peace table. Whoever made that bet minutes before the announcement knew that the markets would soar, that you should short oil, prices of oil would come down. Well, it's going to take Congress to investigate. Pam Bondi, Trump's Justice Department, basically, she wouldn't dare look into this, but someone was making huge bets based on some kind of inside information, not just in the stock market, but on these, Kalshi, Poly Market, where you can just bet on world events. This is identical to what was happening last year with the tariffs. A lot of people last year were making tremendous money, placing big bets minutes before Trump announced he was lifting tariffs on China or imposing new tariffs on China. Who is it? Who's making those bets? If I were a betting man, and I don't know, this is what my gut tells me, Howard Lutnick and his kids. That's my gut. I have no proof, but that's what my gut is telling me. Meanwhile, voters who don't get to bet on inside information, you and I are feeling pain at the pump. 11 million barrels of oil a day have been erased from the global market thanks to the closing of Hormuz. People who follow this kind of stuff say it's the biggest shock to the world oil market in history. We've never seen anything like this. This doesn't compare to the oil shocks of the 70s. When the markets did come to their senses this week and remembered that Trump is completely full of Trump, oil started again selling for more than $100 a barrel, with some of my listeners telling me they're now paying $5, $6 a gallon. Unless the straits open, and I don't see how they will, we're going to miss oil selling for $100, $101 a barrel. It's not unreasonable right now. Goldman Sachs says it's not unreasonable to expect a barrel of oil to sell for $200. Goldman Sachs says that could happen well into 2027, that we're going to see oil selling for $200 a barrel this year, and that will extend into 2027. That's according to Goldman Sachs. If there was a European who didn't hate America before we started bombing Iran, well, that European hates us now, as the price of natural gas in Europe shot up 35% in the past week. Qatar is responsible for much of the world's natural gas. Iran took out two key parts of Qatar's natural gas infrastructure. It destroyed 17% of Qatar's production capacity. And they now estimate it will take more than 5 years before Qatar can get everything back online. Iran taunting Trump and the United States and the world gas and oil markets, saying, get used to this. The price of gas and oil, according to Iran, is never returning to what we grew accustomed to. That is sending shockwaves throughout the world. Sri Lanka, in an attempt to conserve energy, announcing the start of 4-day work weeks. New Zealand will give working families $50 a week to offset the rising cost of gas in that country. Spain's socialist government issued a nationwide emergency decree forbidding landlords from raising rent until this crisis is over. Some Pacific countries are in absolute panic, like the Philippines, which depends on the Persian Gulf for 92% of its oil. The cost of diesel in the Philippines has doubled in the past 2 weeks. The government says they only have a little more than 50 days left of gasoline. The Philippines now living under a state of emergency. They too are implementing a 4-day work week to conserve energy. The government offering subsidies to taxi drivers. In South Korea, they're asking citizens to take shorter showers and stop charging their phones in the evening. China thumbing its nose at the free market and temporarily capping what oil companies in that country can charge citizens. Mike Wirth, CEO of Chevron, CEO and POS, telling stockholders this U.S.-Iran war has done more damage to the world oil market than anything he can recall, including the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which resulted in Joe Biden making it impossible to purchase Russian oil, and that caused oil prices to soar. The UAE's energy chief calling Iran's decision to close Hormuz economic terrorism. The Washington Post reporting not everyone, though, is a loser. U.S. natural gas exporters are on the verge of racking up record profits as 17% of Qatar's natural gas will be offline for at least the next 5 years. There are winners and losers in this war. Before it started, the United States produced 25% of the world's natural gas. That share will increase rapidly, and the U.S. will be selling natural gas for much higher prices. Well, you would think that would benefit the state of Texas, which is the home to much of our oil industry. Well, rising prices for gas and oil are allowing the energy sector to start booking record profits. But that doesn't translate into jobs or tax revenue, because the oil industry was already planning to cut back on drilling. Trump can talk about drill, baby, drill all he wants and opening up federal lands, for more drilling. The energy sector doesn't want to drill. It's expensive. It's dangerous. They want to just charge more for what they already have. So they were already planning not to refine more oil and drill for more oil. Now, with energy demand so high, the energy sector sees more upside just charging more and doing less, which means what for Texas? Fewer jobs for the people of Texas. Record profits for Exxon, fewer jobs for Texas. And that means a smaller tax base for Texas, because don't think for 1 second the energy sector in Texas is paying for the government. Don't think for 1 second they pay the government pays the energy sector to stay in Texas. So this is bad news for the people of Texas unless they own stock in Exxon. So one would think the closing of Hormuz might push the United States towards alternative fuels. The opposite, the complete polar opposite, is happening. This war means big money for the oil industry. That's kind of why Trump started it, kind of. Doug Burgum, our Secretary of the Interior, this is incredible. He just signed a deal where the United States would pay Total Energy $1 billion to stop production of 2 wind farms on the East Coast. We're paying $1 billion to Total Energy for them to shut down their 2 wind farms, because this administration is beholden to the fossil fuel industry. They're fighting a unilateral war against electric vehicles, geothermal, and of course, wind energy. And at the same time that we're going to pay Total Energy $1 billion to shut down its 2 wind farms, Donald Trump is asking Congress for a $200 billion war supplemental to get the Strait of Hormuz open so oil can start flowing again. But Trump is pretending he wants the price of oil to settle. He doesn't want oil to come down. His benefactors, Putin and Exxon, are doing great. Zelensky said this. Zelensky said Putin doesn't want the price of oil to come down. Trump, of course, is blaming Iran for the rising cost of oil. Well, if he didn't bomb Iran, they wouldn't have closed the Strait of Hormuz. He had his big cabinet meeting, his second of the year, on Thursday. He told them, we're close to an agreement. And then you're going to see oil prices drop like a rock. Trump says there's going to be a deal. There's going to be a deal. And if there isn't, America is going to keep bombing our little hearts out. Well, we may bomb our hearts out and our complete stockpile of weapons. That's why we need the $200 billion war supplemental. We're running out of munitions. He was told that was going to happen. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a week before the invasion, said, we don't have enough munitions. We've already bombed our little hearts out, and we're running out of interceptors. Trump continues to lie, insisting Iran assured him they have given up their plans to build a nuclear weapon. The truth is, they're not talking to Trump. They're not talking to America. And the truth is, yes, they did give up their nuclear weapons back in 2003. Our intelligence agencies have been telling that to Donald Trump since he was sworn back into office. And now, even though Iran gave up its nuclear weapons program 23 years ago, we are now hearing that Iran has discovered newfound power. They've discovered what they already knew, that they didn't need a nuclear weapon. They had something more powerful, the ability to close the Strait of Hormuz and bring the entire world economy to a screeching halt. Iranian leaders are reportedly thinking, maybe we should jumpstart our program and begin enriching uranium up to weapons grade. They're thinking, who's going to stop us? Who is going to stop them? Who is going to stop them? Does anybody have a plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz without massive bloodshed? You know that deal that Fox News mocks, Obama's deal with Iran that Trump says is the worst deal in American history? That deal that Trump pulled out of, that Obama got us into with Iran? They weren't making nuclear weapons. That deal is looking really good right now, you idiot, you imbecile. Well, on Monday, you might remember on Saturday, Trump gave Iran a 48-hour ultimatum. He said, you either open the Strait of Hormuz Monday night or I'm going to turn your lights off. I'm going to start bombing you into the Stone Age. And then on Monday, Trump extended his ultimatum. He said, I'm going to wait till Friday for Iran to reopen Hormuz. Then I'll bomb them into the Stone Age. Why did he extend the ultimatum until Friday? Because he can't do it. He can't bomb them into the Stone Age. He can't do it. So he pretended, he lied. He said on Monday, oh, they reached out to me. They want to make a deal. No, you just wanted to save orange face, Donald Trump. They never reached out to you. They know you're panicking. They know your ultimatums mean nothing. And during his cabinet meeting, Trump announced on Thursday, well, I gave them an ultimatum to open up the Strait of Hormuz on Friday. I promised them they would see devastation like no one has ever seen before. And now they have until the first week of April. I've extended my ultimatum once again. He doesn't just make himself look weak. He makes America's military look weak. He makes us look powerless. Every time he extends that ultimatum, he reminds Iran that we have an idiot as our commander-in-chief who doesn't know what he's doing and has no clue how to get the Strait of Hormuz open, how to get oil flowing without massive American bloodshed, which this country doesn't have the appetite for. There was a reason Obama and Europe and Russia made that deal with Iran, that deal that Trump pulled out of. They said it was so stupid. Who's the idiot now? Donald Trump. You said that was the dumbest deal in American history. Who's the effing idiot now? Well, you always were the effing idiot. Again, Iran openly mocking this president that you people voted for, mocking Iran, mocking Trump. Iran saying, we have never approached Donald Trump for a peace deal. That's what Iran said. We're not asking for peace. Why would we ask for peace? This war is not ending anytime soon. Donald Trump lacks the capacity to figure out a way to end this. Iran's Revolutionary Guard announcing on Thursday their 78th wave of attacks against American troops in the Persian Gulf, neighboring countries, and Israel under what Iran calls Operation True Promise 4. Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, that's the division of the Pentagon that fights our battles in the Middle East, CENTCOM. Admiral Brad Cooper is in charge of CENTCOM. He proudly announced Thursday that America has struck its 10,000th target inside Iran since bombing started on February 28th. That means we have dropped 10,000 bombs on Iran since February 28th. He insists the United States has eliminated 2/3 of Iran's missiles and drones, but we don't really know where their good missiles are. Iran has some really powerful ballistic missiles. and they fired one at Diego Garcia, and it reached Diego Garcia, which means they now have ballistic missiles that can reach London. If it can hit Diego Garcia, it fell in the ocean. It missed Diego Garcia. But they have ballistic missiles with a range that can hit London now. So we don't know where those missiles are. Military Lies says we've wiped out 2/3 of Iran's missiles and drones. Well, maybe they're just talking about the Artesh, Iran's regular army. We don't know if the Pentagon is referencing the Revolutionary Guard's stockpile. They killed their naval commander. Israel killed Iran's a Revolutionary Guard naval commander on Thursday. Apparently, you can keep killing their leaders. They have a system in place that's decentralized, and it doesn't rely on one person. The military has also struck more than 90 targets on Karg Island off the coast of Iran. That's where the Islamic Republic processes practically all of its oil. Lindsey Graham is saying we need to go in there. We need to do an Iwo Jima, Okinawa. We need to storm the beaches of Karg Island. And he said, and spill American blood because it's worth it. 10,000 bombs so far dropped on Iran means the United States is running low on ammunition. There are now reports CENTCOM is planning to move Patriot and THAAD interceptors stationed in Ukraine, moving them into the Middle East. The Patriot missiles and the THAAD interceptors have been given to the Ukrainians to knock Russian drones, which are getting better and cheaper, and Russian missiles out of the sky. But we don't have enough Patriots and THAAD interceptors. So there are reports that the Pentagon is going to move all those defensive systems from Ukraine into the Middle East. This, as Russia is reportedly providing Iran with cheap, high-tech suicide drones that cost about $20,000 each. They're better equipped to evade high-tech American-made interceptors that cost about $3, $4, $6 million each. Ukraine has developed anti-drone technology. Trump says, we don't need it. But the Pentagon says, yes, we do. Zelensky has sent advisors and about 10,000 interceptor drones to the Persian Gulf to shoot these Russian-made drones, suicide drones, out of the sky. Iran originally developed some pretty great drone technology, and they started giving it to Russia after they invaded Ukraine, and then Putin paid Iran $2 billion about a year into the Ukrainian war. Putin paid Iran $2 billion for the rights to manufacture Iranian drones in Russia. And then because of battlefield conditions, Russia has been able to design really powerful suicide drones based on the Iranian technology. And now Russia is reportedly giving these drones to Iran, as well as offering up satellite mapping of where our American troops are stationed. Russia is not rooting for America in the Persian Gulf the same way most of us, except Donald Trump, are not rooting for Russia in Ukraine. So while Russia is doing that to our soldiers, the White House lifted sanctions on Russian oil in order to keep the price of oil down on the world spot market. Russia announcing now it will no longer be selling its oil at a discount on the world market. It was selling, because of sanctions, you could get Russian oil cheap, and they were selling at a discount. Now, Russia said, we're going to be capitalizing on this huge demand for oil by selling ours at a premium. And that is expected to result in billions of dollars flowing into Russia's treasury over the next 3 months. As I keep telling you, it is estimated that 40% of Russia's war budget comes from the sale of oil. That's why Biden put sanctions on Russian oil, and that's why Trump lifted it. It is a vicious geopolitical cycle benefiting Putin and the oil companies. Trump, claiming he wants to ease inflation, lifts the sanctions on Russian oil. Billions then pour into Russia's coffers, and they use those billions to intensify their campaign in Ukraine, while at the same time deliver high-tech drones to Iran. And in order to shoot these high-tech drones that Russia has given Iran, in order for America to shoot those drones out of the sky and protect our soldiers, the United States reportedly is now transferring its interceptors, its Patriots and its THAAD missile system, transferring it out of Ukraine to the Persian Gulf, which makes Ukraine more vulnerable and Putin more powerful. Meanwhile, our United States continues its illegal killing spree in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, going after these narco-terrorists, even though General Donovan testified last week. He said it doesn't stop the flow of drugs into our country. But Pete Hegseth proudly announcing once again U.S. airstrikes took out 4 narco-terrorists who were on a boat in the Caribbean on Wednesday. That was when the attack. That brings the grand total of alleged narco-terrorists killed, brings it up to 163. No proof, no evidence that they're narco-terrorists. That's another war. Those are war crimes by every standard. These airstrikes in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific they are textbook war crimes. Can't keep track of all the war crimes Pete Hegseth has committed, and Donald Trump, and these Pentagon lawyers who are not quitting. There are Pentagon lawyers who said, you're committing war crimes. There are memos. These are war crimes. These lawyers are supposed to quit. Wednesday night, Donald Trump appeared at a Republican fundraiser inside Washington's Union Station. He told donors that America, quote, was winning so big in Iran. It's just the way we're winning so big in Iran. Trump told donors not to believe what they read in the press. He said, Iran is begging me to make a deal. He said, quote, they are negotiating with me, by the way. They came to me and they want to make a deal so badly, but they're afraid to say it. Well, why are they afraid to say it? Who is he talking about? Because there's probably somebody planted a seed of truth in that enfeebled syphilitic mind of our commander-in-chief. So Trump says they're afraid, the people who are negotiating with us are afraid they're going to be killed by their own people if anyone knew they were negotiating with the United States, unquote. So what he's saying is he's been told contact has been made with someone in Iran who wants to make a deal, but has no power to make that deal. Fears he's going to be killed if the people in charge found out. Who's he negotiating with? You lie to the president. We found a guy in Iran who wants to negotiate. He doesn't live in Iran, but he wants to negotiate. And Trump runs with it. You surround yourself with yes half men. They'll tell you anything to make you feel like you're not a worthless POS, which Donald Trump is. Well, who's in charge? We have a rough idea. Trump says, no, they're not in charge. No, they don't want the job. We're talking to the real people in charge. Yeah, sure you are. Donald Trump hosted his second cabinet meeting of the year. He insisted Iran is desperate, again, to make a deal. He repeated his claim that Tehran is begging him for peace during the cabinet meeting. Then Trump contradicted himself at the cabinet meeting by saying the Iranians are horrible fighters, but tough negotiators. Trump telling his, I'm chronicling the insanity. It's important to bear witness to his insanity and to have it for the record. He's telling his cabinet, we've decimated Iran's military. Well, leave a comment. Do you think we've decimated Iran's military? Before the cabinet meeting, a wave of social media attacks was launched by Donald Trump. It landed on NATO. He accused them of doing absolutely nothing to help him win his war with Iran. NATO is doing nothing for me. That would be NATO, as in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. None of these are NATO countries. Does Donald even know what NATO is? Turkey has been hit. Turkey's a NATO country. Iran attacked Turkey. So theoretically, if that continues, NATO could be drawn in. But NATO wants no part of this. Trump accused Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal of generating fake news by reporting yesterday that the president is desperately trying to find a way to end this war quickly. Iranian leaders saying they have no interest in negotiating or ending the fighting, with more and more analysts worldwide, especially one from MI6, a former MI6, one of the top guys at MI6, saying Iran right now believes it has the upper hand. Why? Because Donald Trump and his military have no idea how to reopen the Strait of Hormuz without massive American bloodshed, which the American people have signaled they will not support. From what we can tell, it was Trump who approached the Iranians, not the other way around. He did it through Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey. His peace envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, have they negotiated any peace with anybody? They handed over a 15-point peace plan that was then forwarded to Iran's leaders. So nobody in the White House is talking to Iran. They're talking to Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey and saying, hey, if you're on the phone with Iran, can you give them our 15-point peace plan? And Iran's leaders looked at it and said, no. They mocked Trump. They said, this ends when we say it does. Trump, as I said, and this makes us look really weak. And it's not good. It's not good because there are bad people out there who want us to look weak. This makes us vulnerable, and it's not good. Trump, you don't elect a president because he talks tough. You elect a president like Obama, who negotiated a pretty good deal with Iran that looks really, really good in retrospect. And don't think for one second Trump is ever going to acknowledge that. He's never going to learn his lesson. The question is, can America? Can America finally wake up and say, okay, when somebody talks tough, they're impotent. They're masking their impotence. I'm going to go over some polling. Americans are actually waking up. I'm not going to say I'm proud of America, I love America, and our instincts. I'll show you some polling where you go, oh, okay, Americans are wising up in a second. So this makes Trump look so weak. Again, Saturday gives the Iranians a 48-hour ultimatum. Reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Otherwise, you're going to see destruction beyond your wildest imagination. This is what he said to North Korea during his first administration. Stop testing ballistic missiles, or you'll be met with fire and fury the world has never seen before. Next thing you know, he's writing love letters to the leader of North Korea. Trump, Saturday, said either the Strait of Hormuz reopens or we begin bombing your power plants, essentially turning off Iran's heat, electricity, and returning them to the Stone Age. That's a war crime. Even threatening that is a war crime. So Iran responded by posting a map of all the power stations throughout the Persian Gulf with a headline promising to plunge the entire region into darkness, adding, quote, say goodbye to electricity, unquote. So it quickly dawned on somebody in the White House to tell Trump, this isn't working. So on Monday, the deadline was something like 8 p.m. Eastern. You got to open Hormuz. It didn't open. And Trump said, well, I've decided to extend the deadline to Friday because I've been approached by Iran, and they're terrified of me. They want to make a deal so badly. That is a lie. They never approached him. But to save face, he said they approached him, so I can't, in good conscience, start bombing them back into the Stone Age Monday night. I'm going to give them until Friday. And he waited, and he waited, and they never, ever approached him. And now Friday is upon us, and Trump at the cabinet meeting said, well, they got until early April, and then I'm going to start bombing. Every ultimatum makes us more vulnerable. Every ultimatum that he doesn't follow through with because he can't, because those ultimatums are war crimes, and wouldn't result in the Strait of Hormuz opening. It would give the leadership more reason not to reopen it. Every ultimatum that he gives with no follow-through makes America look weak. And looking weak makes us vulnerable. Thing is, well, anyway, this is really bad and dangerous. It's really bad and dangerous to have Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, who think swagger is more important than intelligence. So Trump lied, said, well, we're talking to the top man in Iran. Who? I can't say, but he's the top man. And he's made an amazing peace offer to me. I can't tell you what it is. Well, we've now found out that somebody offered him 5 tankers of gas. He claimed they were offering up the Strait of Hormuz. That Iran said, we'll give you control of the Strait of Hormuz if you'll just stop bombing us. That was the lie that came out of the White House. Turns out somehow Trump was led to believe that they'll give him 5 tankers of gas if he stops bombing. They didn't say we're going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. We'll give you 5 tankers of gas, 5 tankers of oil to stop bombing Hormuz. The art of the deal. Just total lies. Again, Iran has no interest in negotiating. They reluctantly offered up 5 demands on Thursday. They said, okay, you want to make demands? Here's our demands. And Trump is the demand is you stop attacking us, and we have total control of the Strait of Hormuz, and you leave us alone. And that's not going to happen. Israel doesn't want that. And Saudi Arabia doesn't want that. And to prove that they have no interest in negotiating, they launched wave after wave of missile and drone strikes into Persian Gulf, Israel. Rockets and missiles and suicide drones aimed at U.S. Army bases in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and Bahrain. After Iran mocked Trump's 15-point plan and offered up their 5-point offer, Trump, during his cabinet meeting, warned Tehran, you better get serious. I'm sorry. It's not funny. He said, Tehran better get serious soon or they're going to see devastation like they've never seen before. Anybody who's been a parent, there comes a time when your kid turns 8 and you realize nothing you can say. You know, you better. I'm warning you. If you don't, that's what Iran is. Iran is that 8-year-old kid who realizes daddy is pretty much not going to follow through with his ultimatums because mommy won't let him. That's what this is. Iran is Hamas. Hamas and Hezbollah. You can decapitate all the leadership. They're going to find new leaders, and they're going to be even bigger hardliners. So the ultimatums keep coming, and Iran reads, and they know Trump's running out of interceptors and missiles, and he's got to go to Congress to get a $200 billion war supplemental to restock. And everyone knows, and Iran knows that everyone knows, this war doesn't end until Iran reopens Hormuz. I don't think Trump has a plan. I hope he does. I hope the plan doesn't include massive bloodshed for our soldiers. But dropping bombs, everyone knows dropping bombs isn't going to do it. Even the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is telling Trump, at least according to the New York Times, you need to send in ground troops. Not me, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. We're not going to send ground troops into Iran. But we want you, the country that we attacked on 9/11, we funded that attack. We want you to send in ground troops into Iran. So Trump is flailing. He says he doesn't want to call this a war. He said he prefers the word military operation. That's what he said to donors Wednesday night. Last week, he said, I prefer to call this an excursion. Whatever he wants to call this, 50,000 American soldiers throughout the Persian Gulf right now are fighting this war. They're in the crosshairs. You got 50,000 soldiers spread out throughout the Persian Gulf and on ships in the nearby seas. And then 7,000 additional troops, Marines, and the 82nd Airborne, along with amphibious landing craft, are being moved to the region, signaling either Trump's willingness for a ground attack or posturing, threatening. Except for the clinically insane Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, there is absolutely no appetite for a ground attack. There's none on Capitol Hill, and Trump is trying to get $200 billion out of Congress. Graham, as I said on yesterday's show, he's openly urging Trump to storm Karg Island off the coast of Iran. Karg Island processes 90% of Iran's oil. Graham told Fox News on Sunday, yes, American blood will be spilled, but we spilled blood at Iwo Jima during World War II. And in war, sacrifices have to be made. Well, Nancy Mace is a congresswoman from Lindsey Graham's home state of South Carolina. She is the first female to graduate from the Citadel's South Carolina War College. Mace on Wednesday said, quote, Lindsey Graham needs to be, this is a Republican, Nancy Mace said, quote, Lindsey Graham needs to be removed from the Situation Room. I don't want to hear one word from a guy with no kids desperately sending our sons and daughters into war on the ground in Iran, unquote. Republican Nancy Mace. I don't want to hear one word from Lindsey Graham, a guy with no kids. Lindsey Graham doesn't have kids? I thought he was married, had kids. Florida House Republican Anna Paulina Luna is a U.S. Air Force veteran. She accused Lindsey Graham of wanting to use American soldiers like he would expendable cattle, unquote. So Trump and Lindsey Graham are having a hard time winning over congressional Republicans. What we're hearing from Republicans like Nancy Mace, Congressman Thomas Massie, he's still Republican. What we're hearing from Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican, Lisa Murkowski, Jerry Moran, Rand Paul, all Republicans. What we're hearing are three major complaints. And I don't think Trump can address them. So the first complaint is Trump has failed to explain to Republicans on Capitol Hill, as well as the American people, why the war was necessary and how it ends. These Republicans who you can't get $200 billion, they say, unless you tell us why you need the money and what you're going to do with American soldiers. Are you going to be sending American soldiers into harm's way? They won't, the White House won't say. The second complaint, this is from Republicans, is Trump has offered no plan on how to pay for this war. So, as you know, last Friday, the Pentagon officially requested $200 billion for a war supplemental. But the arrogance of Pete Hegseth, he didn't specify how that money would be spent. What would it be spent on? And the third complaint is Trump's decision where he ordered Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to lift sanctions on Russian oil and Iranian oil. Now, Trump told Republicans, I lifted the sanctions in order to keep the price of oil down. But as I've been telling you, you lift the sanctions, it's pouring billions into Russian and Iranian war efforts, which are intertwined. So let's first tackle Trump's garbled explanation for why and how he's fighting this war. Republican members of Congress complained the Pentagon has kept them completely out of the loop. They came out of a classified Pentagon briefing on Wednesday. Several members of the Armed Services Committee, top Republicans, complaining that the White House is telling the American people one thing about the war, and now they're telling members of Congress another thing. And they won't tell us what that other thing is. But apparently there are military objectives that Trump is not telling us. And these Republicans don't like these new military objectives. Coming out of that briefing, Republican lawmakers on Wednesday complained the White House unable to articulate to the American people and to members of Congress what exactly the military objective is. They said it keeps shifting. They said during the meeting, the military objective kept shifting. They said the White House is telling the American people one thing and telling Congress another thing, but then that thing that the White House keeps telling Congress keeps changing. And more importantly, Republican lawmakers from the Armed Services Committee came out of Wednesday's briefing saying they are completely in the dark as to if and when Trump is going to make a land invasion. There is a general sense among lawmakers that Pete Hegseth and Trump feel Congress isn't entitled to this information, that they believe, Pete Hegseth and Trump believe, that Congress cannot be trusted with this information. Well, there is no information because they don't have a clue. Hegseth and Trump don't have a clue. They thought this would be a 2-week war. And of course, there's the issue of transparency on the financial cost. Republican lawmakers Wednesday complained the White House unable to tell them if the $200 billion war supplemental they're requesting is a one-off or just one in a series of asks as this turns into another endless war. As Thomas Massie said, they're asking for $200 billion today. When does that $200 billion turn into $1 trillion? And again, there's the issue of Scott Bessent lifting sanctions on Russian and Iranian oil. Republicans are not happy with that. Now, I guess the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party might be okay with it, but they're certainly not speaking up right now. It is estimated that over the next 3 or 4 months, the lifting of sanctions on Iran's oil will add about $14 billion to its treasury. So think about this. Think about this. $14 billion going to Iran because that's the only oil that's going through the Strait of Hormuz right now. In 2025, Iran spent anywhere between $10 to $25 billion on weapons and defense on its military. Total. All in. Top it out at $25 billion. Funding Hezbollah, funding Hamas, funding the Houthis in Yemen, funding the Artesh, its conventional army, funding the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. All in, $25 billion. America spends close to $1 trillion a year. And Trump, for 2027, wants to give the Pentagon a 50% bump, wants to spend $1.5 trillion a year on the military, plus a $200 billion supplemental for his war in Iran. That military spending in the budget doesn't include an actual war. So in other words, it doesn't make us safe. You know, it's, you want protection? That's going to actually, you want us to actually do something? That's going to be $200 billion. And then another $200 billion. That $1 trillion you pay us every year, no, that doesn't keep you safe. So before last June's bombing campaign, remember we bombed Iran back in June, and Trump said, we have permanently eliminated Iran's nuclear weapons program. How can you permanently eliminate something that never existed? Well, before the June bombing campaign, Iran was spending about $10 billion a year on defense. So they've been forced to nearly double their defense spending. And by lifting sanctions on Iranian oil, Trump is essentially funding our enemy's war effort. And this is how Republicans fight wars. No sacrifice. They don't want Americans to sacrifice a single thing. That's why he's lifting sanctions on Iranian oil, so we don't have to pay more at the pump. So we don't have to wake up one day and say, maybe wind energy is a good idea. Bush invaded Iraq and said he was going to pay for this by lowering taxes. Never before in the history of civilization has a country said to its people, as a government said to its people, we're going to pay for a war by lowering taxes. Supply side economics. In 8 years, George W. Bush more than doubled our national debt by fighting a war that he paid for by lowering taxes, especially for the rich. He fought 2 wars, one in Iraq, another in Afghanistan, 2 countries that had nothing to do with 9/11. He said, we're not bringing back the draft, and we're going to pay for these 2 wars by lowering taxes on the rich. When asked what Americans can do to help the war effort, George Bush famously said, go shopping. That's what he said. Consume. That's what he said ordinary Americans should do to help the war effort. Go shopping. Gee, I wonder why America lost in Iraq and Afghanistan. We invaded 2 countries that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. People get upset, especially Democrats. They write to me when I say Afghanistan had nothing to do with 9/11. Democrats are okay when I say Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. They get a little upset when I state the truth that the Taliban had 0 to do with 9/11. Well, why do Democrats get upset? Because that's how Obama got elected president in 2008. He ran saying the war in Iraq was wrong because we took our eyes off the ball. Obama got elected in 2008 by spreading the lie that Afghanistan attacked us on 9/11. Afghanistan and the Taliban had nothing to do with 9/11. So he was elected. To his credit, Obama pulled us out of Iraq, but he intensified the fighting in Afghanistan, which, let me repeat, you can Google it, you can AI it. Afghanistan, the Taliban, had nothing to do with 9/11. They didn't sign off on 9/11. The Taliban had more important things to worry about than bringing down the World Trade Center. Yes, bin Laden was living up in the hills of Tora Bora in Afghanistan, but he was also living in Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. And those are the 2 countries that did attack us on 9/11. Those are the 2 countries whose either princes, Saudi Arabia's princes, funded the attacks on 9/11. Pakistan's army was all in on al-Qaeda. Nobody likes to talk about the fact that Osama bin Laden is a national hero in Pakistan. It's why he was finally killed in Abbottabad, Pakistan. That's right, wasn't killed in Afghanistan, was killed in Pakistan, where he was treated as a hero. And the doctor who assisted our CIA in finding bin Laden, the way they did it is he arranged these polio vaccines in Abbottabad to get the DNA of Osama bin Laden. It was a pretty amazing feat that Obama's military and CIA pulled off. That doctor, that Pakistani doctor, who assisted the CIA in killing Osama bin Laden, he's sitting in a prison right now, charged with treason because he helped kill a hero in Pakistan, Osama bin Laden. Afghanistan had nothing to do with 9/11. So when you watch this war in Iran unravel, the lies, the flagrant mistakes, the profiteering, this isn't new. Trump is actually a bad liar. This country is always going to war with the wrong people. You can Google that information. I've mentioned this countless times. Democrats get upset because Obama lied about Afghanistan. But it's the truth. It's the truth. Afghanistan did not attack us on 9/11. The Taliban did not attack us on 9/11. How many years did we spend in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban based on the lie that they attacked us on 9/11? Trump is literally pouring billions into Iran's treasury right now. Why? We're at war, or we're at excursion, and he doesn't want Americans to have to sacrifice. So he'd rather give our enemy, rather let them lift sanctions on Iranian oil. Our enemy is going to get billions and billions of dollars to fund their war effort because he doesn't want Americans to pay more for the thing that's destroying the planet. No sacrifice. My parents' generation had victory gardens during World War II. They rationed meat. People turned in their aluminum cans so the government could build tanks and bombers. My father enlisted. People went off. There was a draft. My father enlisted. Now, this generation, we fight wars we don't even have to pay attention to. We have no skin in the game. So of course we fight these wars. We don't even have to pay taxes. We don't even have to pay more for gas. Now, the American people know things are getting more expensive. And if Democrats win big in November, it won't be because Americans are upset that Trump launched an illegal war that's killing thousands and thousands of innocent civilians. No, American voters will only punish Republicans in November because things have gotten too expensive. Some of us will link the unaffordability to the war in Iran. Others won't make the connection. They don't care about the war in Iran. We've become hardened to all this stuff. Other voters will just say, hey, I voted for Trump because he promised to make things affordable and it's gotten worse, so I'm not voting for my Republican senator or congressperson. Voters will not be forced to make a connection between our wartime economy and unaffordability, because Democrats are not going to ask them to. That being said, Americans are waking up. Americans have turned on ICE, for example. For the first time, more Americans favor abolishing ICE than keeping it. I mean, that's incredible. I've been calling for the abolition of ICE since the first Trump administration. People thought I was crazy. Kamala Harris during the first Trump administration was talking about reimagining ICE, but abolishing ICE? Well, we're now seeing, according to an Economist YouGov poll that came out at the beginning of this month, 50% of Americans say they are in favor of abolishing ICE. Get rid of it. While only 39% say keep it. 11% are undecided. The latest polling from CBS, CNN, and Pew shows 60% of Americans oppose the war. Well, that's good. They're right. What are the other 40% thinking? Well, not 40. You don't have 40% who are for the war. You have probably 20% who are for it, another 20 who are going, I don't care. I don't have to pay taxes. I'm not paying. I don't know. What is Iran? Where's Iran? Is that in South America? So when it comes to winning elections, Democrats doesn't look like their plan is to campaign on abolishing ICE or ending the war in Iran. But when you poll voters, and this is why Democrats aren't going to run on abolishing ICE. They're running on, we have to reform ICE. We have to reform health care. When you poll voters, the thing they care most about, inflation, the economy, the cost of health care, the cost of food, the cost of rent. Can you blame them? Illegal wars and ICE do not sit well with American voters, but that's not at the top of their priorities. They see no urgency to that. There's urgency because rent is due. I got to put food on the table. And you know what doesn't register at all? Climate change, global warming, climate catastrophe. When you poll the American voter, they don't give a rat's ass about climate catastrophe. In fact, more Americans are worried about immigrants than they are the oil companies. More, they don't even, it doesn't even, oil companies, climate doesn't even, the weather doesn't even register. One could conclude from that perhaps we're a despicable people. I know my European listeners are concluding that. I don't think we're despicable people. I think, like any country, we have our fair share or unfair share of despicable people. And in this country, a lot of them are now at the top. Keva Madani heads the UN's Institute for Water, Environment, and Health. They said the war in Iran is devastating our climate. With the United States launching 10,000 airstrikes in less than a month, with oil tankers on Karg Island being blown up, with Iran hitting refineries in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Kuwait, we are seeing a massive release of greenhouse gases that are accelerating man's trajectory towards the tipping point, when this planet's hospitality, as we know it, will be permanently changed. Keva Madani, who heads the UN's Institute for Water, Environment, and Health, says decades of environmental progress have been erased in 28 days. All the burning of oil and gas fields, oil tankers that are being burned or sunk, all of these mean pollution. This is like going back many years. The UN says black smoke from damaged oil fields and refineries can be seen from outer space. Local fisheries in the Gulf State region destroyed from the runoff of heavy metals into the Gulf. Oil has heavy metals in it. heavy metals that find their way into the water supply and local agriculture. Everything's connected, and it amazes me that the American people are once again fighting a war in the Persian Gulf for oil, the very thing that is destroying our planet, and the American people don't give a rat's ass about climate change. The 28th, the No Kings March. Get out there. Don't do anything violent. Don't break the law. Write your Congress people. Write your senators. If you listen to the Ralph Nader Radio Hour this week, there's a conversation with constitutional scholar Bruce Fein, who talks about the $200 billion war supplemental and the power members of Congress have. You can stop this war. You have the power. Hegseth needs $200 billion. All it takes is 3 Republicans to say no to the supplemental. Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, Thomas Massie. There's your 3. House of Representatives. Kills the supplemental. All it takes is one chamber of Congress to kill a war. You kill the war supplemental, you kill the war. Now, what Trump, he may do this. He may commit ground troops. And once ground troops are sent in, it becomes politically inexpedient for cowards to vote against a war supplemental because they say, well, when we have troops in harm's way, we have to fund the troops. Don't let them get away with it. That's what Nancy Pelosi got away with when she became Speaker in 2007 and didn't defund the war in Iran. You say to these politicians, pass a supplemental that brings the troops home. Spend the money to pull them out of harm's way. Don't spend money to keep them in harm's way. Leave a comment. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening. Leave a comment. Do you think, I'm curious, because I've been racking my brain trying to figure out how the military is going to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened without massive bloodshed. I mean, that's a kill box. We've been over this. Does Iran hold all the cards? What is going to happen? Like COVID, we are stuck with the worst man in the Oval Office to deal with this problem. All right. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell. I read all your comments. If I made any mistakes, let me know. I issue comments. And if you want to argue with me about Afghanistan and 9/11, I'm not going to argue, but if you have any evidence that the Taliban was behind it, I know they Mullah Omar met with Osama bin Laden before 9/11. I know. That doesn't mean he said go ahead. And even if he did say go ahead, it doesn't mean he was funding it or involved. But if you have evidence that says otherwise, I'm always open for changing my mind. Thank you.